The Hidden Messages in Water by Masaru Emoto, translated to English by David A. Thane. Chapter 4. The World Will Change in But a Moment. Do you know where you can obtain really good water? Perhaps at the foot of the Swiss Alps, or maybe at the North or South Pole. It's not hard nowadays to find bottled water claiming to be the best in the world. But can good water really be purchased? Water is not simply about H2O. No matter how natural or pure the water you drink, without a pure soul, it will not taste good. Let me ask you, how clear is your soul? Are you weighed down by trouble at work? What about family problems? Is your consciousness troubled? If it is, then you may find that the water you drink tastes plain and dull. After you've enjoyed participating in a sport or other exercise, water, even just tap water, tastes delicious and refreshing. In other words, it's what's inside you that counts the most. I know it sounds like I'm saying that it's all in your mind, but what I'm actually trying to say is that when you drink water with a feeling of gratitude, the water itself is physically different than when you drink the same water with clouded feelings in your soul. Our emotions and feelings have an effect on the world moment by moment. If you send out words and images of creativity, then you will be contributing to the creation of a beautiful world. However, emitting messages of destruction, you contribute to the destruction of the universe. If you become aware of this, you will no longer be able to speak words of anger to those around you or blame others for your own mistakes and weaknesses. You have the capacity to change the world within a moment. All you must do is make a simple choice. Are you going to choose a world of love and gratitude, or a tortured world filled with discontent and impoverishment? The answer will depend on your attitude at this very moment. According to the teachings of Buddhism, everything in the world is constantly changing, and nothing ever changes. Speaking from the principles of vibration, the energy of vibration must go on forever in continuous motion. Understanding that everything exists in this one moment will give hope and light to your life. You no longer need to be troubled by the past, and can know that the future can be anything that you will it to be. You, as you are, in this very moment, hold the key to everything. If you want to see how much of an impact your consciousness can have on the world, I suggest that you conduct a little experiment by playing a game we'll call cloud erasing. I want you to try to erase clouds using the power of your thoughts. On a partially clear day, look up in the sky and target just one cloud, maybe one not too large. Your thoughts are very important in playing this game, and so it's important to believe that the cloud will disappear, but you shouldn't try too hard. Focusing too hard will actually have the effect of preventing your energy from being sent out. When you are ready, imagine an invisible beam of energy being sent from your consciousness towards the cloud, breaking it into pieces. See in your mind how the laser beam targets the entire cloud, and not just one part. Then say, in the past tense, the cloud has disappeared. At the same time, say to the energy again in the past tense, thank you for doing that. If you follow these steps, I'm sure that the cloud will start to thin out and disappear in a matter of minutes. As this shows, human consciousness can have an enormous impact on the world around us. Clouds consist of water in the gaseous state, and so it responds especially quickly to our will. Traditionally speaking, anyone who says that consciousness has an effect on the physical world risks certain ostracization for being unscientific. However, science has progressed to a point where the failure to understand consciousness and the mind limits our understanding of much of the world around us. Quantum mechanics, certain psychological theories, such as the flow talked about by Jung, and genetic engineering have all taught us that there is a world other than the one we know so well. You can't see this other world with your eyes, and you can't touch it with your fingers. It's a world in which time itself does not exist. The famous quantum theorist David Bohm has called the world available to our senses the explicate order, and the existence within the implicate order. He envisions that everything that exists in the explicate order has been enfolded in the implicate order, and each part of the explicate order includes all the information of the implicate order. This may be difficult to understand, but what he is saying is that every part of the universe contains the information of all the parts of the universe. In other words, within an individual, and even within a single cell exists all the information of the universe. The information of the universe includes time. In other words, the fact that you exist in the here and now is included in the information of the universe, along with all present, past, and future information. So the changing of the entire world in a moment isn't just a fantasy. But let's think about this moment for a moment. How can we interpret it using physical science? David Bohm explained that an aspect of the universe within is projected into each moment in time, creating the present. The next moment in time is also a projection of a different aspect, and so on. In other words, with each moment, a different world is being shown to us. However, one momentary world will have an impact on the next momentary world, and so it appears to us as one continuous world. Based on this theory, the world is changing every moment and being created anew. Our consciousness has a role to play in this creation of the world. If you become aware of this, I suspect that your life will never be the same. I've talked about some complicated things and may have caused some confusion, but if we reconsider crystals, it will help to answer many questions. This world is changing moment by moment, and water is the first to recognize the change. I mentioned that I made a device for measuring vibration and used it to better understand water. On the afternoon of the invasion of Iraq at the onset of the first Gulf War, I measured the vibration of the tap water in Tokyo and found an unusually sharp increase in the values of vibrations produced by mercury, lead, aluminum, and other substances harmful to the human body. There seemed to be no apparent explanation for this. At first, I suspected that there was something wrong with my equipment, but repeated measurements indicated otherwise. It wasn't until the following day, when I read the newspaper, that I made the connection. News of the start of the Gulf War covered the front page. It's been said that the weight of the bombs dropped on this first day of war was equivalent to all the bombs dropped throughout the Vietnam War. In Japan, thousands of miles from the Middle East, I was able to measure the vibrations from harmful substances at almost the exact time that war broke out. You might ask, is this really possible? Of course, the harmful byproducts of the bombs in the Middle East weren't immediately transported to Japan. However, the harmful vibrations of the bombs being dropped on one side of the earth did reach the corners of the earth immediately. These vibrations spread out beyond the limits of time and space. I suspect that vibrations exist not in our three-dimensional world, and not in the unseen world of a different dimension, but in a middle world. When something occurs on the earth, in no matter what world, water is the first to detect it and relay this new information to us. At the time of the Gulf War, I hadn't yet started taking photographs of crystals, but if I had taken photographs, I'm sure they would have been very interesting. Let me give you one more example in which vibrations had an immediate impact on the physical world. In this case, the power of prayer was used to purify water. At Fujiwara Dam in central Japan, we had a Shinto priest of the Shingon sect named Haoki Kato repeat an incantation. When I first met him, he showed me 2 photographs that made a lasting impression, and so I wanted to see for myself what was recorded in the photographs. One of the photographs had been taken before an incantation, and the other after. The second photograph showed a remarkable difference. The water was considerably clearer. The power of the incantation had come from the spirit of words, and so it is possible that the energy from the spirit of words had purified the water in the lake. In order to verify this, I wanted to take photographs of crystals formed from water before and after such an incantation. The priest stood on the edge of the lake and performed the incantation for about an hour, all of which I videotaped. After the incantation, the priest and I conversed. Within 15 minutes, my crew called me over. "This is incredible. The water is getting clearer right in front of our eyes," someone said. And it was absolutely true. You could clearly see that the water was becoming more and more transparent as we looked at it. We were even able to make out the foliage at the bottom of the lake, which had been hidden by the cloudy water. We next took photographs of crystals. The crystals made with water from before the incantation were distorted and looked like the face of someone in great pain. But the crystals from water taken after the incantation were complete and grand. Within one hexagonal shape, there was a smaller hexagonal shape, all enclosed by a halo-like pattern of light. Of course, it did take some time after the incantation for the water to become clear, indicating that changes in substances that can be seen with the naked eye are somewhat gradual. But there is no doubt that the vibrations of prayer are relayed to nearby objects in an immediate way, affecting the nearby water. This was a physical phenomenon that can't be explained unless we accept that another world exists within the one we call our own. But the story doesn't end there. A few days after this experiment, an incident was reported in the press. The body of a woman was found in the lake, and when I heard about this, I remembered the crystals created from the water before the prayer, and remembered how the crystals had looked like a face in agony. Perhaps through the crystals, the spirit of this woman was trying to tell us something. I would like to think that her suffering was alleviated in part by the incantation. There is another world in addition to the one that we live in. When looking at our world from that world, we can see things that we cannot see now. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake of England is a researcher who focuses on furthering the understanding of a new worldview in association with this world that we cannot see. After receiving a doctorate in biochemistry from Cambridge University, he served as a lecturer in biochemistry and biology at Cambridge, while also serving as a fellow of the Royal Society. Dr. Sheldrake's theory is outlined in a book that he wrote more than 20 years ago, but the scientific journal Nature dismissed the book by saying that it should be burned. Despite this rejection, his theory reached the hearts of many, and research into his theory continues. What was it that drew so much attention? It's often said that if something happens twice, it will happen again. Perhaps you have found it strange that accidents and crimes tend to happen in series. Looking at history and social trends, you can see that over long periods of time, events do generally repeat themselves. How can we explain this strange repetition of events? Dr. Sheldrake attempted to use scientific means to find an answer. Scientists normally approach objects that they can't see with their eyes by using reductionism to isolate a physical phenomenon. However, Dr. Sheldrake took an entirely different approach. According to his theory, when the same thing repeats itself, a morphic field is formed, and resonance with this morphic field increases the likelihood that the event will happen again. A morphic field is not energy-based information, but more like a blueprint for building a house. We can see this as an example of resonance theory. Dr. Sheldrake has proposed that events are also capable of resonating in the same way that sound resonates. He refers to the location where such events take place as the morphic field, and the phenomena of repeated similar events as morphic resonance. Although his theory was quickly dismissed by nature, the announcement of his theory was taken seriously by the more open-minded, resulting in serious discussion. There is no doubt that Dr. Sheldrake has departed from the existing paths laid out by science, but you have to admit that his theory goes a long way toward explaining mysteries that traditional science has been unable to deal with. During typical discussions of such mysteries, the talk often turns to glycerin crystals. For the first 40 or so years after glycerin was discovered, it was generally accepted that it didn't form crystals. Then one day at the beginning of the 19th century, a drum of glycerin en route from Vienna to London suddenly started to crystallize. A short time later, in a completely different location, another batch of glycerin also crystallized. This crystallization began to spread, and now it is generally accepted that glycerin forms crystals when temperatures drop below 17 degrees Celsius or 63 degrees Fahrenheit. So what should we make of this? When the crystals first formed for whatever reason, a morphic field was created, and eventually all glycerin, in compliance with the morphic field, started to form crystals. This type of phenomenon has occurred in many other substances as well. Despite all the randomness in the world, once a substance begins to form crystals, then it often becomes common for it to form crystals thereafter. Not too many years ago, a television station in England decided to conduct a public experiment to see if they could test the validity of Dr. Sheldrake's theory of morphic resonance. They first prepared 2 paintings. Both looked like random patterns, but within one was hidden the figure of a woman wearing a hat, and within the other a man with a mustache. The figures were designed such that it was impossible to see them. The experiment took place in 3 steps. First, before the live program, a group of participants were asked to identify what they saw in the paintings. Second, during the program, the secret of the painting of the man with the mustache was revealed. Third, after the program, another group of participants, who weren't allowed to watch the program, were likewise asked to identify the paintings. What do you think the results were? The second group did a far better job than the first in identifying the man with a mustache. The experimenters did their best to account for all possible factors, such as removing the data from viewers in countries other than England and Ireland. But the results still showed that the second did 3 times better than the first. This experiment tells us that when someone becomes aware of something, other people also tend to become aware. It was the effect of the morphic field that led to the remarkable increase in correct responses. According to Dr. Sheldrake, DNA isn't the only reason that people in the same family share similar features. Morphic resonance also plays a part. Dr. Sheldrake's theory also helps us to understand so-called coincidences referred to as synchronicity, and the phenomena of group consciousness, collective memory, and archetypal patterns. The important thing about Dr. Sheldrake's theory is that once the morphic resonance has spread, it extends to all space and all time. In other words, if a morphic field is formed, it will have an instantaneous impact on all other locations, resulting in an instantaneous worldwide change. When I first heard about Dr. Sheldrake's theory, I couldn't contain my interest because my research into water crystals was nothing less than an attempt to express the resonance of the morphic field in a way that can be seen with the naked eye. When I first attempted to take photographs of crystals, I had no success at all for the first 2 months. But once I was able to capture the first photograph, other researchers also started to succeed. Perhaps this is also a result of morphic resonance. I first learned about Dr. Sheldrake's work from a best-selling book in Japan called Why Does That Occur? By Aichi Hajiro, but I became truly interested when I saw Sheldrake in a television documentary called 6 Scientists of Interest. 4 years later, as luck would have it, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Sheldrake during a lecture tour of Europe. A friend who attended the seminar happened to know Sheldrake's wife, and so I found myself invited to their home in London. I was pleased to learn that he already knew about my research into water crystals. He said, "At least once every week, I get a letter from someone telling me about you." I had many questions for Dr. Sheldrake, but he was also extremely interested in my work, and as it turned out, he had as many or more questions for me. He also shared the following with me. I have conducted research into living organisms and their behavior, but not water, and so I'm not that familiar with water. However, it's likely that in the future, there will be connections between my research and your research into water crystals. The area that I'm most interested in is the effect that observation has on the observed. There are people who know when someone is looking at them from behind. I want to do research to try and express this in a statistical way. There's a risk that the documentation on this research will be subjective, so I'm wondering if we can't use water in the experiment. I'm going to try to take photographs of crystals and see how water changes under various conditions, such as when the water is ignored, and when it is observed by people with special talents, normal people, and then extremely evil people. This sounded remarkably similar to the experiment in which the rice in the ignored bottle rotted faster than the rice in the bottles exposed to "thank you" and "you fool." When I told him about this experiment, he became even more interested, and he suggested that if I tested the effect of just looking at water, it would be easier to get results than using rice, which involves the complicated growth process of microbes. Dr. Sheldrake currently has a strong interest in the phenomena of telepathy. He conducted an experiment to find out if dogs showed a response when their masters started to head home. Using video equipment to make observations, he has been able to verify this phenomenon in more than 200 cases. I would like to pass on to you a message that I received from Dr. Sheldrake. Our lives are made possible by the movement of an unseen energy. Therefore, I would hope that we'll always be aware of this and pay attention to those around us and the things going on around us. This is something that is very important. This is because the act of looking at something has an effect on it. Everyone seems to be aware of this, but we don't put it into practice. In the home, parents need to pay attention to their children. It's the same thing. Focusing your attention on anything serves as an expression of love. Dr. Sheldrake is on the leading edge of this study of the impact of consciousness on objects, and so his words come with special significance. If we combine the lessons that water teaches us with the theories proposed by Dr. Sheldrake, we go a long way toward unlocking the many mysteries of our world. Each one of us has a magical ability to change the world. We have all been granted the power of creation by God. If we use this power to the maximum, we will be able to change the world in but a moment. For people who see no end to their worries and suffering, this perspective should come as considerable comfort. Yes, you have the ability to change the world. Everything in the world is linked. Whatever you are doing now is being done by someone else at the same time. So what type of morphic field should we be interested in creating? Are we creating fields of pain and viciousness? Or are we creating a world filled with love and gratitude? Whenever you sit in front of water and send out messages of love and gratitude, somewhere in the world, someone is being filled with love and gratitude. You don't need to go anywhere. The water right in front of you is linked to all the water in the world. The water you're looking at will resonate with water everywhere, and your message of love will reach the souls of all the people of the world. We can cover the world in love and gratitude. This will become a glorious morphic field that will change the world. It's not about time and space. Now, here, wonderful and marvelous things are possible. Chapter 5. A smile that fills the world. Wanting as many people as possible to know about the wonderful mysteries of the universe as revealed through water crystals, I published the collection of my water crystal photographs in Japan, but I actually got a larger response from Europe. It seems that a ripple effect in people's souls resulted, which spread at a speed far faster than I could have imagined. What could it be that caught the interest of so many people in so many different countries? I think that when a person looks at the photographs of water crystals, a physical change takes place in the water within that person's body. Water has a message for the world. The world is linked together by love and gratitude. Love and gratitude are fundamental principles of nature. At the end of its long journey through the cosmos, water arrived on the earth with love and gratitude in its bosom. This love and gratitude created the first inkling of life, and then provided the tender nurturing required for growth. Looking at the water crystal photographs awakens a primeval memory contained deep within the water in each of our cells. The message of water is love and gratitude. Review the photographs of crystals found on pages 101 through 132 of this book. These images reflect our beautiful world. The photographs indicate the change in water resulting from scenery and music from around the world, and include a comparison between tap water and natural water. As mentioned in the first chapter, the world first learned about my work through my first collection of photographs of water crystals. This was made possible by the efforts of Shizuko Awehand, a Japanese woman with Dutch citizenship, who now serves as my interpreter. Through the introduction of a common acquaintance, Shizuko visited my office less than a month after this collection of photographs was first published in Japan, and I showed her a copy of the book. The moment she looked at the photographs, I could tell that she was impressed. Right then and there, she purchased 77 copies, which she sent to friends and acquaintances in the Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, the United States, Australia, and other countries. Not long after sending out the books, she started getting a flood of responses in return. It was as if the crystals were exactly what so many people were looking for, what these difficult times that we live in require. Shizuko subsequently invited me to give a presentation at a small annual seminar that she holds in Zurich, Switzerland, entitled Looking for Human Jewels. A week after this event, there was to be a major annual gathering. With Shizuko's assistance, I would have the opportunity to lecture before several reporters and to be interviewed for articles in a few magazines. The result would be an enormous wave of interest in and understanding of my work. One of the people behind this major event was Manuela Kim, another person who saw the collection of photographs and became enchanted. She sent the following message: I have 2 children, and I know that there's a completely different effect when you speak to children with love and when you just order them. It's the difference between let's do it and do it. I also clearly understand that this is felt in each one of our cells. In our daily lives, water crystals teach us very important things. Every day we are surrounded by magnetic fields. We find it impossible to live without computers, but we can clearly see that there is a great difference between being unaware of the risk of magnetic fields and being aware and careful. I was very impressed. After seeing the photographs, Manuela invited me to give a seminar that she would organize. She first talked to the environmental agency of a small town called Sanglant about a lecture on the theme of water and the environment, but they said they couldn't help because the topic was too delicate. She then turned to those more open to spiritual matters and gathered groups of people who had a desire to explore that which cannot be seen with the naked eye. All those who heard about the water crystals were visibly impressed and inspired. Thanks to Manuela's efforts, in the course of a week, I gave presentations in 3 cities in Switzerland, and I returned to Japan, knowing that there were vast numbers of people with a desire to learn more about what I was doing. Manuela's first invitation was followed by many others, and wherever I have spoken on the topic of water crystals, the response has been marvelous. I have had the opportunity to make many trips to Europe to give lectures and presentations at halls overflowing with people with a personal and professional interest in water. The ensuing articles in magazines led to further interest abroad, and as more and more people showed interest in the collection of photographs, I was flooded with requests to give lectures and presentations. Information about my work spread from Europe to the United States, where I was invited to speak at Harvard, and also at a free school in the suburbs of Boston, attended by children who did not fit into the American society stained by guns, drugs, and violence. It was probably this sensitivity of the students that made them more receptive to information about water crystals. I'm quite sure that the students left with the realization that saying unkind words causes damage to water, as well as to other people. I imagine with a smile that they returned home that day and told their parents not to say things like, "Do your homework," or "clean your room." But this is just one more aspect of the resonance phenomenon. As people who have had their tender souls damaged in some way learn about water crystals, the message of water spreads ever more quickly around the world. Perhaps we can also say that this is the result of people searching for answers during these troubled times. I have no doubt that water crystals will become a common focal point for people all over the world who are trying to make sense of chaos. My visits to Germany, Switzerland, the Netherlands, England, France, Italy, Canada, and the United States have given me the opportunity to meet and correspond with many others around the world who are also conducting research into water. Perhaps because water is so mysterious, the approaches are varied and unconventional. All this interest in water means that symposiums and other gatherings are always being held around the world, making me quite busy, sometimes too busy. The symposium in Switzerland has since been held twice more in Lucerne, and it is likely to continue to grow and become more international as time goes by. I have also participated in symposiums in Australia and England. I first wondered how much interest there would be in water in Europe and other countries, but now I know that other countries have as much or more interest than Japan. I remember hearing about a group of Japanese visiting Zurich Lake. The lake was so beautiful, that one of the participants asked the Swiss tour guide, "Why isn't there any trash at all around?" The guide, who took it for granted that the lake would be clean, didn't know quite how to reply, and instead asked the Japanese, "Why do you ask such a question? Wherever I go, I take slides of the water crystal photographs, and then I show audiences the crystals formed from their own local water. When they hear my message and see the slides, Europeans are visibly surprised and impressed." Such forthright responses indicate that they have a high consciousness concerning water. However, my research is limited when I make crystals in Japan, and so people have requested that I open a research facility in Europe. In response, I have begun to talk about a concept that has been floating around in my head for a long time. The concept is grand and unique. I want to create a research facility that is itself in the shape of a hexagonal water crystal. The laboratory for studying water crystals will be located at the center, and 6 other laboratories will be located around the center to study other subjects and fields of science: physics and mathematics, biology and medicine, astronomy and oceanography, philosophy and religion, and chemistry and engineering. Each of the labs will focus on 18 categories of research, for a total of 108. I have been thinking about this for a long time, prompted when I started to think about why the environment of the Earth is in such a bad state, why people are so confused, and why our civilization is such as it is. Pondering these questions led me to the conclusion that it is a result of the combination of, first, pride and corruption in the scientific community, and second, those in authority consciously allowing and encouraging the formation of such a society. Of course, there are scientists who have their own will and work according to their own consciousness. However, when we consider the condition of society, we realize that there are really very few who have conducted their activities with a mind to perpetuating the human race and cleansing this planet that we occupy. This does not describe, for example, scientists at the beck and call of those in authority in Japan who insist that water must be tainted with chlorine, resulting in an overall decay of society. Of course, scientists aren't the only ones responsible for the problem. The foundations of society have become so weak that it is no longer possible for a handful of scientists to change the deplorable direction in which we are headed. How can we change direction and do something to significantly improve the depressing state of affairs that permeates the scientific community? I think we must start by changing the environment and systems related to the scientific community. In the laboratory that I have in mind, the local community will come together to support scientists who will focus on their own field and also interact with scientists of other interests, giving them a wide perspective from which to structure their courses of research. The community will also help secure the necessary financing and other assistance that individual researchers are currently unable to obtain on their own. I expect that the result will be discoveries and advances that will truly contribute to the future of the Earth and humankind. I have an image of the researchers gathering at the central cafeteria for discussion during their morning and midday meals, and in the evening announcing the results of their research. Of course, there are a great many obstacles that must be overcome to make this dream a reality, but I now feel that the first step has been taken. No matter what your intentions, announcing them is an important step. I can say this with confidence based on many years of experience in business. From the time when I was a child, I was always telling people what I was thinking and what I wanted to do, and I was constantly being told that I talked too much. But the simple act of saying something is a way to gather energy towards you. Especially when you say something to other people, energy flows in your direction and helps you to achieve your aims. If you express your intentions, the realization of those intentions will follow. Of course, I'm not proposing that you make irresponsible statements. It's important to say what you really feel inside. Your word is your promise, so when you say something, you must have the determination to commit yourself. Letting other people know your intentions also often leads to the arrival of required assistance from unexpected sources. Words have their individual and unique vibrational frequencies, and we've already seen how words have energy that influences the universe. The words from your mouth have a power of their own that influences the entire world. We can even say that the words that teach us about nature are the words of the Creator. I know a man who has proven the power and benefits of words, using his own body. Nobuo Shoya is a man who I am proud to call my master. He is 101 years old, but his back is straight, and he appears strong and healthy to anyone who sees him. Even now, he stands for 1 or 2 hours to give lectures several times a year. He also practices his golf swing every day and goes to the course once a week. His ability to maintain his health is nothing less than miraculous. Master Shoya says that his secret for health is his own unique breathing method. This method involves breathing in until air fills the lungs, providing oxygen to the entire body, while thinking about the energy of the universe gathering around him and providing him with invigorating energy. This method also indicates to us the power of affirmations. Master Shoya recommends that at the end of his breathing exercise, you say the following affirmation: "The infinite power of the universe will be concentrated and bring true peace to the world." This statement is a type of prayer, but what is important is his strong determination expressed by the word will. According to Master Shoya, there are ghostly particles that cannot be seen by the means of today's science because they exist on the border between the third and fourth dimensions. Words spoken with determination have a strong power that gathers these ghost particles, making it possible to accomplish things in the three-dimensional world. In September 1999, I had the opportunity to actually feel the power of words as expressed by Master Shoya. On this day, approximately 350 people had gathered on the banks of Lake Biwa, Japan's largest lake. I had gathered the group together in an attempt to clean the lake. There's an old saying in Japan that when the water of Lake Biwa is clean, the water of all Japan will be clean. Another purpose of the gathering was to pray for peace for the entire world as we entered the new century. Under the direction of Master Shoya, who was 97 at the time, this large crowd joined forces in an affirmation for world peace that brought our voices and hearts together. Our chants could be heard around the entire lake, and there was a special feeling that made our spines tingle. Just a month after this event took place, a strange thing happened to Lake Biwa. The newspapers reported that the putrid algae that appeared each year and caused an unbearable stench had not appeared that year. If you don't understand the principles of the spirit of words, this happening will indeed seem strange. But we know that this spirit of words has the power to influence all of existence and change the world almost immediately. I have no doubt that the spirit of words generated from the determined prayers for world peace had the effect of cleansing the water in the lake in only a matter of moments. Another important point is the fact that 350 people gathered and chanted together. The combined will of so many people acted as a force to change the universe. I sometimes use Einstein's theory of relativity, E = mc, to explain this principle. This formula has an additional important meaning. The general understanding is that E equals sign mech means energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. However, we can also interpret C as consciousness instead of the speed of light. Since M represents mass, we can interpret it as the number of people consciously focused. This interpretation was taught to me by Professor Hong Van Duc, a scholar of psychoimmunology born in Vietnam. More than 10 years ago, when I invited him to attend a seminar I was holding in Japan, he mentioned in casual conversation that the C of E equals sign MC referred not to the speed of light, but to consciousness. This perspective made a deep and lasting impression on me. Later, when I was thinking about vibration and how people should live their lives, I suddenly recalled those words. Almost a century has passed since Einstein announced this formula to the world. There is no way of knowing if Einstein himself considered the 2-2-2 possibility of C representing consciousness. But since everything in the universe is relative, you can't say that it is a mistake to see the formula in this new way. It is said that people make use of at most 30% of their abilities. But if we can increase our abilities by just 1%, then this amount, according to the formula, will be squared, doubling the amount of energy. If people around the world were all to increase their consciousness at the same time, the difference in energy would be enormous. If we fill our lives with love and gratitude for all, this consciousness will become a wonderful power that will spread throughout the world. And this is what water crystals are trying to tell us. I have just described how the earnest prayer and thoughts of a group of people were able to cleanse the water of a lake. But those who have seen the photographs of the crystals should not be surprised by the fact that our thoughts have the ability to change water. Several years back, I had a desire to take another step toward establishing the scientific foundations for my theories, but I wasn't quite sure how to go about it. I found the hint. I was looking for one day when I happened to open the newspaper. The headline that captured my eye spoke of the ability to use ultrasound to decompose dioxin in water. The article reported on the development of a technology to expose water to 100 kHz of ultrasound, creating tiny air bubbles that decompose dioxin and other deadly toxins when they burst. When I read this article, I couldn't contain my excitement. I knew that I had finally found a way to analyze the energy from the spirit of words. When the 350 people gathered on the banks of Lake Biwa to chant and pray for world peace, it is possible that they also created 2000 kHz of ultrasound. Ultrasound is in the range that cannot be detected by the human ear, so they didn't create this ultrasound with their voices. However, it is possible, based on the principle of resonance of tuning with the same sounds in different octaves, that the conditions were right for creating ultrasound. It must be said that the power of the spirit of words is indeed marvelous. But if we combined the ultrasound technology for purifying water with water vibration technology, the effect on water would be much greater. For example, after water polluted with industrial chemicals is treated with ultrasound, it could then be treated in a second process with vibration. When polluted water is exposed to 100 kHz of ultrasound, the chemicals are decomposed when the air bubbles break up. Although the toxins have decomposed, they are still there. To rid the water of these toxins, it is necessary to expose the water to information with the opposite vibrational frequency of the toxins. Using just one of these two methods may not be sufficient, but by combining them, it may be possible to completely rid the water of any harmful pollutants. And it might just be possible to use this same combined technology to get rid of the harmful substances within our own bodies. What does the future hold for research into water crystals? To answer this question, we need to think more about how much scientific recognition this research will receive. When I show the photographs at my lectures abroad, I'm bombarded with a variety of questions. For example, what are the differences in crystal formation when the water is exposed to digital versus analog music? What about live music? In order to answer such questions, I need to continue research and conduct more tests under a variety of circumstances. Another important issue is test repeatability. Many times we have seen that crystal formation depends on the observer's consciousness. When water samples are put into Petri dishes, we usually make 50 samples. The resulting crystals differ, depending on how the water is handled and on the thoughts of the researcher, and the condition of the 50 samples of water changes moment by moment. It may be practically impossible to control all of these factors to the point where we can say scientifically that all conditions are equal. However, our approach has been to get as close to these conditions as possible by using the most accurate scientific methods available. Our efforts include the use of blinds to remove the possibility of change from the researcher's thoughts. We do this because we don't want the thought that the water being told, "Thank you," will produce a more beautiful crystal than that being told, "You fool," to have an impact on the results. We label the sample dishes with letters of the alphabet and don't reveal which water is which until after the results have been seen. We hope that this method will remove the effect of the researcher's thoughts as much as possible. For each of the 50 dishes, we make graphs showing the number of crystals in each dish that are considered beautiful, hexagonal, incomplete, and so on. For each pattern, we establish a coefficient and give number values to the crystals. This gives us a clear picture of the characteristics of the crystals in each individual sample, and we then can classify the samples into the categories of beautiful, hexagonal, and so forth. Then we choose one crystal to photograph that best represents the characteristics of that particular sample. Water crystals change depending on the thoughts and even the health of the observers. To account for this, we have several experienced researchers observe the samples. The intention of our research is to use these methods to discover the messages that are contained in this most delicate of messengers. Perhaps one area in which research into water crystals can be most helpful is the prediction of earthquakes. It is believed that water is capable of detecting a forthcoming earthquake earlier than any other substance. I envision a time when water samples will be taken from groundwater daily, and by observing the changes in crystal formation, we will detect changes in the Earth's crust. When an earthquake takes place, we can compare photographs of crystals made from water taken before and after the earthquake. By accumulating data on the crystals leading up to the earthquake, we will be able to find similarities and ultimately be able to use this information to predict future earthquakes. Having lost my grandparents and an aunt on my mother's side in a terrible earthquake in 1923, and considering the pain and destruction caused by the earthquake that hit Kobe in 1995, I can personally say that being able to use water crystals to predict earthquakes would be an enormous contribution to humankind. It is also quite possible that this technology could someday be used to predict other forms of destruction, such as storms, floods, epidemics, and even the planning of a secret attack from a hostile country. I am also working on finding a way for everyone, with or without scientific equipment and knowledge, to take photographs of crystals. With the use of new materials, it appears that this will be possible in the not-too-distant future. We are looking at super thermoconductive materials that are 20 times more efficient than normal thermoconductive materials, making it possible to freeze water at room temperature. It will no longer be necessary to take photographs in a special room cooled to -5 degrees Celsius or 23 degrees Fahrenheit. Researchers are now developing a device based on this technology that will allow anyone to take crystal photographs almost anywhere. I suspect that water crystal technology will in the future be shared by all humankind. However, this could also be a double-edged sword. Used correctly, water has the potential to bring unlimited glory and happiness to humankind. But such technology can also be used for gain or to cause harm. Our bodies are mostly water, and so life cannot continue without it. But we cannot forget that water also has the potential to wash away civilization and cause destruction. It all depends on what's in our souls. The human soul has the potential to bring happiness to the world, but also to bring pain. This is a fact that water crystals clearly reveal. So how can we go about finding our path in life? I have constantly stressed the importance of love and gratitude. Gratitude is the creator of a heart filled with love. Love leads the feelings of gratitude in the right direction. As the water crystals show us, gratitude and love can spread throughout the world. We all have an important mission: to make water clean again, and to create a world that is easy and healthy to live in. In order to accomplish our mission, we must first make sure that our hearts are clear and unpolluted. Over the centuries, humankind has constantly robbed from the earth and left it ever more polluted, the history of which is recorded by water. Now, water is beginning to speak to us. Through water crystals, it is telling us what we need to know. Starting today, we must begin to carve out a new history. Water is carefully and quietly watching the direction that we take, the direction that you take at this very moment, and watching over us all. I only ask that you listen to and absorb what water has to say to all of humankind and to you. Epilogue: I sincerely hope that we can continue this wonderful discovery of water and of the universe. When I first heard that water constantly continues to arrive on the earth from the distant reaches of the universe, I was filled with wonderment. I began to think that if water continued to arrive at this pace, the earth would soon be flooded. From ancient times, the human race has constantly been subject to damage and destruction caused by water. Almost all cultures of the world have a story of a great flood, and there is even scientific evidence that indicates that the earth was once covered in water. We cannot completely discount Noah and the Great Flood, and the tales of the civilization of Atlantis and the Mu continent lost to the sea. The saying that history repeats itself is ultimately true, and so even now there exists the risk that water will arrive from space and once again cover our planet. This event may still be 1,000 or 10,000 years in the future, but perhaps it is not too early to take action to ward off this disaster. Even now, we frequently hear about floods in all parts of the world. But once, when I found myself fretting about this possibility, another completely different thought came to me. Everything that exists in the universe is parallel. The micro world is a faithful reproduction of the macro world, and the universe is an enormous mandala, which means circle in Sanskrit. This way of thinking leads us to the conclusion that everything that takes place in the universe also takes place within our own bodies. The human body requires the circulation of water, and we can conclude that this is what the universe also requires. If large volumes of water flow in only one direction, toward the earth, the circulation of water in the universe will ultimately come to a standstill. Water arrives on the earth and then ultimately returns to the far reaches of the universe on an unending, marvelous journey. The water on this planet will someday set off on the outer leg of its journey into the cosmos. But what does the fact that water is constantly arriving on the earth mean for us? Perhaps the earth is not the only destination for these lumps of water. But while there may be other stopovers, no other planet we know about has the necessary conditions required to pool water. If we compare the solar system to the human body, I suspect that the Earth plays the role of the liver. Each day, your liver filters 200 liters of water and sends this purified water to the other organs in your body. Considering this, it's not hard to imagine that the Earth plays the vital role of purifying the water circulating in the solar system and then returning it to the universe. Then whose responsibility is it to purify this water that has arrived on the earth? It is ours, humankind's, and this is because we are ourselves water. Having been born here, we all have the responsibility to purify the water on the earth. As I ponder the long and marvelous journey that water takes through the universe, I find myself thinking about such things as the origin and future of humankind. But if we consider that we are water, then the answer to many of these mysteries becomes clear. Water makes up 70% of our bodies, and there is little doubt that the information in the water goes a long way in the formation of our personalities. I have often heard cases of people injured in automobile or other accidents, who, while receiving blood transfusions, saw images of places they had never been, or had memories of a past that wasn't theirs. Sometimes transfusions have even been known to cause a change in personality. It could be that the events we experience throughout our lives become memories recorded by water, which remain in our bodies, and may be what we call the soul. There are still many questions left unanswered about the soul, rebirths, and the existence of spirits. But I suspect that the day will someday come when many of these questions will be answered by scientific means using water. Where does our soul come from? We have seen the possibility that it comes from the distant universe, carried by water. So we ask next, what is in store for the soul? Since we are water itself, someday all our memories of experiences on this planet will be launched into space, and our responsibility before this happens is to become pure water on this earth. To make this possible, we must first and foremost live life to the fullest. Our consciousness is what will purify water, and through this we send messages of beauty and strength to all life. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could cover the world in the most beautiful of water crystals? How do we go about this? The answer is love and gratitude. I'd like to ask you to take another look at the beauty of the crystals. If all the people of the world can have love and gratitude, the pristine beauty of the earth will once again return. We live our short lives on this planet, and then we set out on a journey into the universe. I'm not sure how this process works, but we can leave this up to the laws of the universe. Of course, when we make this journey, we will not be in our current physical form, but in the form of water or mist. When my soul is ready to set out on its journey to the cosmos, I fully intend to call out to everyone and say, "We're off to see the universe. Let's go to Mars." Thank you for tuning in. Peace, blessings, and much love and enlightenment to you all.
On Earth, there was once a people who held the knowledge of the universe across space and time. They were the Israelites. Over time, their wisdom was scattered among all nations, with each taking a piece. In the end, This left them destitute. Now, listen to this profound wisdom passed down through great works, presented in your voice, from your own perspective, from the perspective of the Israelites themselves. For early access to chapters and full audiobooks, consider becoming a member. For just $10 per month, you can unlock exclusive access to this priceless wisdom, once stolen from our ancestors. Hear their voices through your own as you join us on this journey of discovery and reclamation.